The CEO might be everywhere, but at 80 or 100 people, the same CEO cannot be at every meeting, every decision, or it becomes a bottleneck. That's where you need to start thinking about, I actually need structure, I need clear ownership. And that's where startups and founding teams tend to start failing, because they have to start, they can be on the details, but they cannot be everywhere. If you don't commit to, this is actually our customer profile, our ICPs, people like to say, then sooner or later, churn is going to start going up, cost of acquisition is going to climb, the sales team is going to be chasing their own customers, just because no one stopped to ask, okay, wait, we are 1 million ARR, who are we really here for if you want to hit 10 million? And that's the next confusion I see, which is people don't stop for clarity. They just keep going because they assume growth is clarity. If you stop hearing from customers, from people, in a matter of weeks, something is off. If you stop having customer success mentioning customer issues or sales mentioning customers they're talking to, if you stop listening about customers somehow in the conversations, you need a bit of a warning sign there. It means something is being hidden.
Today we will be discussing what SaaS companies fail to do in culture and team dynamics as they start scaling. My guest today is Hugo Pereira. Hugo is the co-founder of Ritmo, a goal software built for fast-moving teams that want strategic clarity without the bloat of OKRs. A fractional growth operator helping scale-ups with go-to-market and build resilient, high-performing teams. He's an angel investor in early-stage companies, and he's also the author of the book called Teams in Hell: How to End Bad Management. Welcome to the show, Hugo.
Thanks, Joran. Thanks for having me.
I actually forgot, before this, you helped companies scale from $1 million to $100 million in revenue and teams from 10 to 700 people. So just to make sure you did this multiple times.
Yeah, I never get old. It's always a fun joy and a fun ride to do it over and over again.
Nice. Let's start with fun, or maybe not so fun. Can you share a story of a startup or scale up you work with that seemed to be on track to succeed, but ultimately failed, and tell us a bit what went wrong, and especially, of course, on the culture and team side?
My first startup, which now seems a lifetime ago, because it was already 2012, which, it felt like yesterday, but it's already more than 10 years ago, almost 15. But was a B2B SaaS company out of Belgium founded. It was a decision-making software. So they were building decision-making tools for complex stakeholder environments. Just think about environmental companies that need to make decisions on which project to prioritize. It had everything on paper, a good potential product, seed funding, big name customers like the government of Canada, Brussels Airport, the big train company in Italy. Solid start. Everything seemed good on paper. And I joined a startup rather than a corporate at the time, because there were not many hot startups in Europe. I thought all the startups were cool, and for sure, any startup will have a better culture than any enterprise company. That startup had a culture deeply flawed, despite being a small team of 6-7 people. It was the first time I realized that in small companies, startups are all about the founding team. The founding team sets the behavior, mindset, choices, the values. Up to maybe even 50, 100 employees is all about the founding team and their behaviors. And in this situation, the founding team operated from a very old school, top-down command and control mindset. I remember that one time we had an all-nighter with the marketing team putting out a new website live. At 3 a.m., we were super happy. Plenty of mistakes launching website at 3 a.m. Definitely do not do that. The next morning, I arrived 5 minutes late to the office and immediately got pulled apart, got scolded. This is unacceptable. You cannot arrive late to the office, etc. I was like, it's 5 minutes, and I was at until 3 a.m. Over time, I realized that, the founding team was very ego-driven, a lot of authority. Even on product roadmap, it was dictated almost entirely by their university thesis logic. They had just come out of university, they had built a thesis, and that was the whole concept behind the software. So no customer validation, no feedback loop, a lot of stubbornness. So for me, it was a good example of a bad example, but a good example at the early stage of my career on everything that you should not do at a startup level in order to scale. So it doesn't come as a surprise that I cannot say that they fail in a binary sense, because they still exist, but they definitely fell drastically short from their potential. And they are probably a small, medium company still. So that's one of the cliche stories that many people face at startups.
Love it. I had a similar experience when I started working. I did my internships abroad and I came to the Netherlands. I started working this corporate job. I mean, it wasn't a startup. It wasn't sexy at all, but I kind of experienced authority and things I didn't want. After that, I joined the startup world and never left it.
I remember we went to Turkey for a Web Summit alike, like these like large tech conferences. It was not Web Summit, but was one of the other big ones, where there was a startup pitch competition. We were on the final 10. The CEO and co-founder went on stage, did a pitch. We didn't win. And afterwards on the way back, he was like, well, we didn't win because the speech preparation, messaging, the positioning, what you said was not good. So that's why we lost, because you didn't do good work. It's a startup competition, hundreds of companies, many factors, but yet it was a very command and control, very blame culture at a very early stage. It was just a 7-people company. So if that's the motion that's set by the co-founding team, then it trickles down to whatever behavior happens next. That's why I only stayed 1 year at the company, maybe a year too long, but it taught me a lot. It is a startup culture. This matters. This can make a difference between make it or break it. Naturally, it's all about the product and service, but over time, culture can play a role, or behavior can dictate success as well.
Makes sense. And it goes well into my next question, because I wanted to ask, when should you be caring about team and culture? But you already said it starts with the founding team. So I guess it starts day one probably, or?
Day zero, especially if you are a founder or a first-time leader. Culture, like a seed that grows into either building an organization that is built on trust or toxicity. It's a bit of a tough word, being a toxic environment or a trust environment. So if you ignore it early, I think you'll pay for it later. Now, it does not mean that you need to have a culture code and a whole documentation on day one, because it's very hustle-oriented. But it means that whatever behavior you set as your aspiration, probably the behavior that the company or the startup will have for years to come. So at least you need some consciousness about the culture you want to build. If a founder gets there or not, that's a different question.
And when we talk about culture, like what does team and culture actually mean to you? Could you describe how you would?
Yeah, there's always this joke, culture is the behaviors happen when you are not in the room. And the choice that people make when you're not in the room is the hidden behaviors. But mostly culture I see as a combination of values, behaviors, and rituals or systems. What are the behaviors can be as simple as what you prioritize, speed or alignment based on the founding culture. Do you prioritize customer feedback or sales input? There's a lot of behaviors that you take based on the choices of culture. Values are a bit more intrinsic, but an important aspect. And I think people do take it very lightly nowadays. And I'm not talking about values like a one-sentence values, but I talk more about values about do the company has the same shared understanding of transparency? Are you like Buffer alike? Yeah, like Buffer, the social media tool that has everything published, salaries, roadmap, revenue, or I talk transparency more like an IBM or an enterprise company, that is like filtered transparency, let's say, because of the context of business. So I think have a shared understanding of the values is a clearer one. And the other one is rituals. Rituals could be as simple as the choices you make on offsites. Do you do quarterly offsites? Do you do hybrid work? If you do remote work, do you do asynchronous? Do you choose asynchronous? But if you choose asynchronous, do you reward discipline? Yeah, because if you do asynchronous, but you don't have any documentation, you're going to have trouble sooner or later. Do you reward the discipline and behavior processes, not just the outcome? So that's what I meant by culture, a mix of values, behavior systems, rituals that define how an organization works.
Today, we're going to talk about what SaaS companies do which fail in culture and team dynamics. Of course, we're going to talk about the positives as well. Let's start with the negatives, I guess. Like in your view, what are the most common reasons why scale-ups fail during growth, and I guess specifically towards like team and culture?
I've been to 3-4 startups as an operator, employee, or as a founder, or as a first-time hire. Then as a fractional, I think I work with 6 scale-ups. I work mostly with scale-ups or 10 million ARR companies as a minimum. There are 3 reasons I see most of the time scale-ups failing. To sustain the growth, because they might grow, but they might not be lasting growth. People's systems don't evolve with complexity. So let's say companies are growing and what used to work breaks. Like, for example, you start with informal check-ins because you're a small team. Why do you need like more than informal check-ins? But it becomes chaos when you stop having clarity. Or feedback becomes hearsay. I heard this versus actually structured feedback that is documented. Or the roles blur. You have someone that was hired, but they do a mix of everything. But when the company becomes bigger, you cannot keep having people that do just a lot of everything. A good example is a 20-person startup. You kind of have everyone reporting directly to the CEO. You don't, but somehow the CEO might be everywhere. But at 80 or 100 people, the same CEO cannot be at every meeting, every decision, or it becomes a bottleneck. That's where you need to start thinking about, I actually need structure. I need clear ownership. And that's where startups and founding teams tend to start failing, because they have to start, they can be on the details, but they cannot be everywhere. There is all this conversation about founder mode. A lot of people confuse founder mode as being excited, mission critical, on the details, versus founder mode has to be on everything. I doubt that the founder mode is discussing the text of an ad when you are a 300 people company. It's a waste of time. Which comes to my second point, which is founders that control too long. Tends to be the second time why I think like people tend to fail. The company grows, the leadership style stays the same. The founder still wants to have the final say on the design and product, every pixel, every line of copy, every sprint. I remember even my CEO at TV Box even had to learn that growth. We wanted to discuss everything on marketing because he was so excited. I remember telling Christoph, did you hire me to make decisions or just follow what you say? Are you the marketing person or am I the marketing person? It's like, you're right. I'm sorry. He said, okay. What do you want to have what do you want to really have a conversation about? What do you care about? This. Then we're going to discuss this. Everything else, unless it's a red flag, let it go. And that was it. He was able to grow with it. He said, okay, you're right. I have to let it go. Everyone loves growth at startups, but most fail because of lack of alignment. They confuse traction. They think traction means understanding. Oh, we are growing, therefore everyone knows what's happening. But success can mask confusion. Growth can spike without having any clarity. You can keep on growing just because of momentum without having clarity on what it actually you are building. So, for example, you can get 1 million ARR with a bunch of use cases. Yeah, you have 5-6 different use cases. But if you don't commit to this is actually our customer profile, our ICPs, people like to say, then sooner or later, churn is going to start going up. Cost of acquisition is going to climb. The sales team is going to be chasing their own customers just because no one stopped to ask, okay, wait. We are at 1 million ARR. Who are we really here for if you want to hit 10 million? And that's the next confusion I see, which is people don't stop for clarity. They just keep going because they assume growth is clarity.
Yeah, interesting. So I guess like the first one, processes break, so feedback becomes hearsay, rules become blurry. Founder, I guess second one, always want the final say. Third one, lack of alignment, not agreeing on the ICP, the case studies you want to go after.
Yeah, it's cliche for a lot of people. They just see, this is what's happening nowadays at my startup. But it's the most common things I see over and over again. Even at companies with 10, 20, 30 million, sometimes they're exactly having this mistake, and it's just there in front of them. But they are just so deep into day-to-day business. They just sometimes need someone to say, look at this. Can you agree on the shared circumstances? And if they agree, then the chances of succeed are much higher.
Yeah, it's a bit of a startup style where you kind of have to have a little bit of chaos, but then at one point you need to create the clarity. Success can mask confusion. So I guess if you have a lot of success, you probably don't want to deal with it anyway because things are going great. But at one point you need to start building the clarity. Yeah,
you can see in all sorts of sectors, even the electric vehicle market, everyone was growing. Even the B2B SaaS software for electric vehicle charging, all of them were growing. The market was growing. As soon as the market hit a plateau or sales decrease or problems arise, everyone starts shaking. And then it's where confusion starts happening because it was like, now we have 12 use cases and, 18 personas and we have to make a choice. And making a choice means consciously lose revenue somewhere. And that's when you can distinguish founders that are really, sharp versus founders that are just indecisive. And it's just like, okay, I cannot lose any single revenue because my VC is going to kill me, but you might need to make tough choices in order to grow faster or better. Just a small example of masking confusion.
Yeah. I think you already answered my next question because I wanted to ask what separates companies that succeed at scaling from those that don't, but it's creating clarity and making sure that everybody goes the same route.
Clarity of the problem to solve. And nowadays, I think it's even more important to own the why now story. There's so much noise because of a variety of reasons on B2B SaaS. There's so much tooling. There's so much possibilities with software that if you don't own why this matters, why now, and the us story across the company, it's going to become really tough to scale. And only something really simple, but that alignment is really tough to get. And I think is what separates the ones that succeed from the ones that don't. Other things are also important from a people point of view, which is the ones that have clear accountability and ownership in their whole motion of people. That's really, really good. And the last one is a cliche one, which is deep. I think every company has to have deep customer ties. People talk about customer obsessed, customer first, all this kind of jargon. But overall, I know it's silly, but if product is talking to users, if marketing is listening to the community, sales reports back the learnings, this whole organization works as a learning system, then the chance of succeeding are much higher. And I know it's easier said than done, but it is a behavior. And just to explain, for example, the first thing as a fractional operator I tend to do at any team I join is to take over the customer stories interviews. I just say, hey, for the next period of time, I know that you might be responsible for this, but I want to be the next one interviewing the customer, the success story myself. Because then I talk to the customer, I interview, I try to understand, I go to another one. It's the only way for me to really learn why people choose the customer that I represent or I work with. So yeah, so deep customer ties for me really helps succeed at scaling, I think. Yeah.
Nice. Like any scale up, right, goes to different stages. Like I kind of went through a bit the process as you mentioned, like with a company called Leadfeeder before, where I joined where there were 18 people. I left when there were 120. So we kind of had the process of break like all the time, where I wrote the process and 6 months later I had to throw it away again. Like what are the typical stages scale ups, I guess, go through when you think about company culture? Because we had the founder mindset and their behaviors, but then of course people come in, still a small team. Then at one point, I guess, things are going to change. Like what are the different stages they go through?
It's a good question. At first, growth is driven by hustle. It's a bit cliche because even people are not talking about, the hustle culture is really the culture. But the reality is, even if I believe that, you shouldn't be working like 24/7 for 10 years in a row. But the reality is that for startups to succeed in a growth stage, at the beginning is hustle. Point. Then hustle is no longer enough, because then when you start hiring more people, the responsibility starts to get dropped between functions, like marketing says, oh, no, this is sales responsibility. Sales is, no, this is CS responsibility. And you have this loop of like, no, the lead, you are responsible for leads. I'm responsible for the next part. And then you have like a product launch, but there's no enablement or marketing campaigns that have messaging that sales doesn't agree with. This is where the founders miss the inflection point where you go from hustle to formal frameworks. And the second stage is like a framework, or you process I don't want to say a crossword, but you process shit out of things. I know it's a bit tough, but you just formalize frameworks. This is how we work. This is how we scale. This is how we build. This is the second stage. The third stage perhaps is a stage where you start to have peer growth, no longer depending on founders, but on peer groups, leadership teams, the specific partners, specific customers that help you scale everything. And that's where like shared metrics, shared ownership, lightweight processes play a role. You have hustle, then you have like first motion of lightweight processes and frameworks at the second stage. And then the third stage is repeatable systems. You just start repeating things because it's a motion. This is where you join in and there is an onboarding process. There's an actual onboarding where people follow content and they have a system where, I can order a laptop, and there's an actual emotion that just follows, just works. And then you can repeat that. If it's 100, 200, 400, 600, 1,000 people, doesn't make a difference. It's the same process. It just scales with it. Those ones tend to be at least 3 growth stages. They don't have names. I don't have a name for it. Maybe it's a good idea for a content piece. This is what I see happening most of the times. And I'm thinking about, like similar to your podcast, up until 10 million ARR. Probably these are the 3 stages, like the first one until the 10K is all informal. Then to 1 million, you start having the lightweight processes. And then from 1 to 10, honestly, it's about finding repeatable motions. And I think repeatable motions even in culture, even in culture. That's where you care about the onboarding. That's where you care about customer feedback loops. That you care about speed of development, etc., etc. Yeah.
This podcast episode is brought to you by my personal favorite SaaS event and community, SaaStock. The Europe event is taking place on the 14th and 15th of October in Dublin, and it's going to be 2 full days of investor matchmaking, talks from other founders, and meetings. Lots of meetings. I think they even had over 15,000 pre-scheduled meetings last year. As a listener to the podcast, you are getting an exclusive 30% discount through the link in the show notes. And even better, if your company is already doing above 1 million ARR, you might even qualify for a completely free ticket while they last, plus up to 400 euros towards travel expenses. So it can't get any better than that. The discounted tickets are going to be limited, same with the free ones. So make sure you hit pause, hit the link, get your ticket, and then come back to the podcast. You will see us in Dublin as well, as we do have a booth on the event. So make sure to get your ticket. When we look at cultural alignment or misalignment, because nowadays a lot of companies work remote or hybrid, it's harder to figure out, I guess, like, are things working with somebody? Because you can mask things because you're either in Slack or you can just close your laptop after a Zoom meeting and you have no idea what's happening. What kind of warning signs should leaders look out for when it comes to cultural misalignment or team misalignment?
A few come to mind. The first is consensus seeking. When you have excessive consensus, I know if people think about, why is that bad? It's a warning sign. That means that people are not challenging back. They're not pushing back. And that means if they're not pushing back, is because they're not at a stage where they trust or they feel they can voice their opinions. You want to have productive conflict. You want to have people push back. You want that. The other one is the lack of feedback channel, especially in an early stage. If a co-founder CEO is not easy access to anyone that joins the company, then you're losing a feedback channel. I recall something great, even from EVBox, even if another company that I worked with, which was an AI software quality monitoring tool, where the CEO was meeting every single new person that joined the company and taking them for breakfast or lunch. It was really nice. So he, up until 250 people, I recall that at least at EVBox, the CEO did that. I found, wow, he really is making the time to go. And after, when he became too big, kept doing breakfast with 4 or 5 people of the company, like aleatory. The chief of staff will just pick, and then you'll go on for breakfast or lunch with them. I found that was a fascinating feedback channel for understanding if there is misalignment. It did create chaos, as you said, because sometimes there will be feedback. The feedback will be processed by the CEO. 5 people represent 500. No, this is all wrong. Let's change it. It creates chaos, but it was also fun acting on it. The feedback channel is critical. And I say feedback channel on people because it's a topic, but could be the same for customers or even partners. The other one I think is very dangerous is the hero culture. That's when you start promoting and glorifying overwork. That's very typical even from Southern cultures, which is like, oh man, John is working 16 hours a day. He's always on fire, etc. And maybe John is overworked. Maybe John is just doing busy work. He's just output driven. I don't know. I had an example of a fractional operator customer that I had where the content marketeer was over glorified. She creates 3 blog articles a week, always on content for everyone at sales. And then I check the 1-year growth of SEO ranking and traffic to the website, etc., and was exactly the same. Nothing moved. You're overworking, doing output. Everyone is glorifying and becoming the hero culture. This is the shining star of the company, at least from a marketing point of view. And the results is not there. And so overwork being glorified is a warning sign. The last one is more business, less culture, but I still find it's part of culture, which is customer detachment. If you stop hearing from customers, from people, in a matter of weeks, something is off. If you stop having customer success mentioning customer issues or sales mentioning customers they're talking to, if you stop listening about customers somewhere in the conversation, it's a little bit of a warning sign there. It means something is being hidden. Just a misalignment that happened.
Makes sense. One step deeper into this, we talk about trust and accountability. Like you kind of mentioned it already, like you need to have high ownership in the company if you really want, I guess, the startups to succeed, and you also want people to push back on things. But how do you even scale maybe even trust and accountability?
It's a great question. I don't even know how you can scale trust. There's a few things that I was when I was thinking, or when you were asking me that question before, I was just thinking about how can you scale trust. But there was one thing that came to mind. I remember this story from EVBox, which is when you switch from being the manager to a manager of managers. When the team gets too big, you have to rely on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people to continue the culture. That's where you can scale trust, which is like, okay, I no longer can influence how you manage your sub-team or your smaller pod, but I trust that you're going to keep the same philosophy of trust as I have, or as the one that I want to evoke. That's when you can scale trust, when they represent the same kind of behavior that is positive for the company, and they are not afraid of doing so. I think that's one, and that's very conscious decision to say, okay, I trust you to build a trust within your sub-team. You have to be free to do it in your own way, with your own style. But then you have to agree on behaviors. Yeah, I think that's just one, to have shared expectations. So clear expectations on the behavior is one. Frequent feedback. On accountability, I think accountability is very much connected to outcomes. So if there is clarity on what a good outcome looks like, the chance of scaling is much better. A lot of times there's not a good conversation on what a great outcome out of all the work that we do. And because there's not that conversation, accountability cannot happen. Yeah, so you hire a sales rep, and they say, your goal is meetings book. Go and book meetings. Hard to scale that because the person might not have a good onboarding, doesn't know who's the customer, didn't got good training, and then you just expect that meetings to show up booking. So their accountability is clear to be on both ends, which is, okay, I want to get the point where the outcome will be that in 6 months' time, you are able to have this amount of meetings per month. How the calculation comes from, I don't know. Comes from this process thinking. On the other side, I'm going to be accountable for your expertise. And as such, I'm going to make sure that you have access to A, B, C, and D, and this training. That's how you scale trust and accountability. Shared outcome understanding and making transparency a norm, not the exception. First off, you need to really know what's your stretch of comfort with transparency. I know everyone says they want to be transparent, but you really have to know can your team handle the transparency that you want to invoke or implement before you implement it? And yeah, I see a lot of people that want to be transparent, but they are not able to cope with the transparency.
People want it, but to actually be, it's a completely different thing. You need feedback loops, right? If you want to be transparent, people have to be able to give, as you mentioned, pushback. So they should also be able to receive feedback. How do you set up proper feedback loops so people can actually get their recognition maybe and even the direction they need without the always endless meetings?
Well, I think there's a formal and informal. I think with remote, it's even more important, these feedback loops, because before you are in the office, when everyone was in the office, you get more frequent feedback loops. Informally, the coffee, etc. Let's have a conversation. Someone might just bring you aside. With remote, I think you have to kind of formalize the informal check-ins. So for example, I have a notification that every month or every 2 months, I want, depending on the person on the team, I want to do an informal check-in where I really just say, hey, do you have 5 minutes or do you have 30 minutes? I want to do an informal check-in with you. And I just have a conversation as if I had a coffee chat. It's not the same, but I see the openness is much bigger. I prepare the question beforehand. It's not about how are you doing? The terrible question is curiosity, what has been one thing you have learned the most in the last 3 months that you are proud of? What has surprised you about the team that you didn't know about? What's one behavior on the team that you see growing that you are not happy with, that you're just afraid of speaking up with? And if you don't want to share, it's perfectly fine with you. So you start having prepared questions that the person might not have full preparation, but that's fine, because over time, they start getting used to think about these bigger questions on the team. The other one is I at least have that on a quarterly basis. The whole team has to come together for an offsite. 1, 2 days, digital, online, offline, depends on the momentum. It just has to happen. On a quarterly basis, you need to do a proper offsite. And that proper offsite needs to have a feedback loop, a proper feedback loop on the company, on the business, on the way that the team operates. And then normally the way I see it is that it's like a design organization, it's like a product development. You put a roadmap and they say, okay, we have all this backlog of behaviors you want to implement. Which one goes on the roadmap for the next 3 months? And people say, I want to get more understanding of each other's strengths. There's a bi-weekly team presentation where someone prepares something very specific about their center of expertise, something they are working on that they want specific feedback, or something not related to the company that they are very passionate about. And that's it. And they just use that spot. And then 3 months later, we just say, was this valuable? Was it too often? Was it less often? Let's reduce it. And a recent one, for example, we killed the weekly retrospectives. That meeting on a Friday, going around, we just kill it. We just said okay, everyone is tired. Let's move it asynchronous. Dedicated channel. Everyone shares that what went well, what could be better, what is prepared for next week. Kudos, insights. Everyone just shares on a Slack channel or a Teams channel. And that's it. And we've been doing that for 6 months. Everyone loves it. And that was org design. But it's like product development, just for culture. Backlog, roadmap of behavior, implementation, feedback, embedding, scaling. And I know it's a bit strange, but people just have to think about people design the same way as they think about product design. Just you play with behaviors and you experiment, you scale what works.
Yeah. And in the end, you listen to feedback. So if people don't like certain things, like have a meeting at the end of Friday because they might want to close sooner or they want to do other stuff, or they just don't want to have a meeting on Friday afternoon, then figure something else out.
And sometimes you can even reward behavior. Yeah? So I had an example of someone that was missing for 2 weeks, the weekly retrospective. And I asked, what stops you from sharing timely the weekly retrospective? Is an important moment. It's a moment of consideration of the week for people to read, feel what the team is doing, etc. The person just realized, I'm being sloppy. I don't have a reasoning behind. So I'm sorry, never going to happen again. It was just a small call out. And why does it work? It's not because I'm calling out as a boss. I'm calling out because we agreed as a team. And the person feels, okay, I agree to this. I was there. I'm failing the team. It's not about failing the boss. I'm failing the team. It's a shared commitment. It's no longer like just a contractual conversation.
Yeah, if you make it a shared commitment and everybody agrees to do things, they are going to feel the responsibility to do it. If they don't, at least it's not just you calling them out. This is a leadership behavior, right? You're not telling them exactly what to do. What kind of leadership behavior could kill morale or momentum? What shouldn't you do as a leader, as a SaaS founder?
Well, the obvious one everyone talks about is micromanagement. Everyone hates micromanagement. The only thing I always mention about micromanagement is to understand the difference of being in the details and being a micromanager. And sometimes people that join the company, even those people confuse being in the details for micromanagement. And I know it's a bit of maybe a less popular opinion, but a lot of people confuse the founders or the team leaders' ambition to be the details, to understand the business, to understand what's happening versus being a micromanager. And they confuse and they feel that being in control and sometimes tells more about them than the actual behavior of the company. Sometimes in teams, I have that conversation saying, hey, FYI, sometimes I'm doing this. If you feel uncomfortable, it's not because I don't trust you. So I like to write articles. For one of the companies, I'm writing the articles on the social media of the CEO. Why am I writing it? Why am I spending time on that? It's because it helps me understand the CEO, the vision, the company, the product. It puts me to do the work. Otherwise, I'm just a glorified fractional CMO, which is not the idea, is to be an operator. But I have to clarify that, for example, with the head of content to say, hey, it's not because I don't trust your content. I think you are phenomenally great. You write a great content. This is for me to make sure I stay in touch with the reality of what we are building so I can support you. So if you see me create a content, it's not because I don't trust you, it's just because I want to stay on top of things. If I'm doing too much, just let me know. If I'm overreaching and you want to take the lead, just let me know. But just know that this is why it's happening. It helps a lot because the person doesn't feel like it's micromanagement. I understand why he's doing this. It's not about the role. It's not about ownership. It's about doing the best for the company and just spreading work better. So that's one, micromanagement, but understanding the difference of being in the details. Indecisiveness is a terrible one. It's better to have, even if it's a terrible leader, better to have one that is clear than one that is not clear, because that's terrible. Indecisiveness leads to over-optimizing for consensus, not knowing where to make a choice. And sometimes companies fail just because you have a founder or a CEO that says, okay, which ICP do we go after? All the 3 of them. Which use case? The 7 of them. And I'm like, okay, but which market we put the budget? This one. But then the next week is like, no, but we also need this one. I remember one that was killing me. And as a B2B SaaS company, we had to agree our priority markets were 1, 2, 3, 4. This is it. It's ruthless. There's nothing else that matters. Not even a week later, like there was some big shot company out of the Middle East that wanted to make a large order. And the CEO was like, no, we have to accommodate this. And I'm like, we just agreed that you're going to say no to everything. Yeah, but this will become our top 15 customer. It doesn't matter. We had to do regulation, compliance, create a local company, so many things beyond that. And I'm like, we just agreed to this. Indecisiveness is terrible. The last one that kills morale is emotional inconsistency. Think about toxicity, like someone that is just, that just evokes blame culture. There's always a blame on someone else. There's always someone to blame, Yeah, I think it kills momentum when we don't take the hits, for the team any team feels if you're always like blaming something else.
Yeah. Nice. Let's start wrapping things up a little bit. Yeah. So if we stay fully on this topic, like if I would have to ask you, like, can you summarize your best advice regarding team and culture in one sentence to help SaaS founders lead a team through scale? What would it be?
I think the best is to never lose sight of why you started in the first place and why does it still matter to keep building. I know it's cliche, but ultimately, over time, people are still driven by purpose. You join a company for what you can do, but stay at the company for what you can become. That's the reason behind. There may be other ones, but ultimately, if you stay long in a startup or scale up, it's because you feel you are evolving, you are becoming better, you have opportunities. But you have to love what you do or what you sell for. For a founder, the best way to evolve a culture is just to stay close to the why. And I know, again, it sounds cliche, but it means that, that's what people follow at the end of the day. They might follow the founder, they might follow the product, etc. But they follow the mission. They stay for the mission, let's say. So you want to evolve a culture, you don't lose the original DNA. Keep reminding yourself why you're doing it in the first place. The hardest part is to think about, why am I still doing this? Why did I start in the first place? What was the pain point I wanted to solve? Why do I still believe in it? And be honest with yourself in these questions. Tie those to rituals, hiring, decision-making processes, codify what matters. But the biggest advice is this part. Stick to the why, to your own why in the first place. Yeah.
Let's go to the final 3 questions. So first, we're going to look into the future. What should SaaS founders, in your opinion, prepare for in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah. I'm having 2 angles, one from the people point of view, since it's the core theme here. The other is from generic B2B SaaS. For the next 2 3 years is one, I think people should start expecting slightly slower deal cycles and larger buying committees. I think there's higher and higher cost of acquisition costs that are coming. Channels are more saturated. It's harder to stand out. The whole playbook is shifting from high volume capture to more deep relationship building. So I'll just say, like, for the founders in the next 2 3 years, really try to understand which kind of deep relationship activities can you build to make sure that your startup succeeds. And this can be, close events with, it doesn't matter, it can be close events with the customers, it can be that you have to expand through partners, it can be that you have to spend more time doing community building, user generated content, if that's the case of the product. But I think this whole high volume capture, it's going to get tougher and tougher. It's not impossible. You can see crazy that is still happening. But even those ones of high volume capture, like we just talk about Lovable or Cursor of this world, they have a deep relationship with their community. You can see it's being built. Even like Clay, which is a really tough technical product to master, they're having a deep relationship building with their partners, and that's how they're building scale. So founders can prepare for that. And the other one for the founders is like, stop having this conversation about brand versus demand generation or brand versus lead generation. It all helps. Stop thinking about that. From a people point of view, just don't rush hiring in the next 2-3 years. If you hire for fit, hire people that really stick and grow with you. Hiring is getting expensive. Pay attention to which kind of organization people want to build.
Well, we're going to dive into revenue stages. This is going to be advice purely for SaaS founders just starting out and growing to 10K MRR. What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I can talk about my own mistake. I was trying at 0 to 10K MRR, which was the first stage. I was trying to prove scale. And I realized I'm not even at the scale stage. I should have been proving value. So that means the cliche of nail product market fit first, period. And that's the most cliche. There's not even advice. It's just known. And I think building in public is definitely something that if you're comfortable with is worth it for accountability. One major mistake is to prioritize conversations over conversions. I was caught up on conversion rates because that's when I came from a mindset point of view at such an early stage that is not worth it. I was like, website visits, conversion, demo trials, activation. The conversion is not good. And I was trying to activate for conversions, but there was just like 100 demos in 3-4 months. It's not a big number. So why I was so caught up on conversions rather than having deep conversations to figure out which are the best 5-10 potential customers and really understand working with those. So that prioritize, deep conversations with the right fit over conversions, because that's definitely one that I mishap completely. Yeah, I was looking at efficiency rather than insights. From 0 to 10K MRR is all about conversations and insights and not conversions and efficiency, and that was a massive error on my side.
Nice. Let's assume now we passed 10K MRR and we're going to grow towards 10 million AR. So it's a huge step. You definitely have to focus on conversions. What advice would you give SaaS founders here?
Yeah, the jump is so big that I was even thinking I cannot really see a jump that big. So I was even like, I need to have a 2-year situation just to hit the first 1 billion ARR. That jump is massive. It's easier said than done, but yeah, for me to 1 million ARR is just figure out just one channel, one persona or ICP, one use case you can repeat the scale over and over and over again. I think over time, I see over and over again. In my first 2 startups, because we were in that journey, we hit 1 billion ARR, but we hit in the wrong way and we couldn't scale up. With Talent Square, for example, where we were acquiring, we're activating, we're retaining, but it was not the same kind of customer. They were all different. It was enterprise, it was small, it was HR, it was not HR. And then we just had multiple channels, multiple personas, use cases that we couldn't pass beyond. The advice is to, just focus. I think the 10K to 1 million is like incredible focus to get a repeatable motion, a repeatable growth motion. Easier said than done, of course. But that one use case, one channel, one persona, or one ICP, just that's it. Hyper focus on that, even if it fails. And if you're talking about the 1 to 10, which is another like whole jump, and even 1 to 10, there's the many phases of 1 to 10. But if there is one thing I see that didn't happen often in the ones I worked with, at 5, 6, 7 million, it's too late. They start using their community. Only when they got in trouble, they start looking at references, co-marketing, feedback loops, building a community of their customers or user or partners. And by then, everyone was already either annoyed, churn was increasing, they were stuck. So use your early community as your, like HubSpot likes to call it, your flywheel. I think that would be, from a people point of view, from 1 to 10, I think this is where really hiring functional leaders or that are fit, that are stage fit, are critical here. I think there's so many mistakes on hiring at this stage. And I'll say, don't hire job titles. If someone comes because they want to be a VP of marketing with 2 people, it's not the right hire point. You're not a VP of marketing with 2 people under you. If they care too much about that, you already are in the wrong stage fit. That's it. Yeah.
Nice. Let me try to summarize. So if we take it all the way to the beginning, I guess, like culture starts with the founding team, right? Their mindset, behavior, and their hustle is not going to be purely built on a good product or big client. Culture is a seed that grows. either building on toxic or trust. It's the hidden behavior when you're not in the room. It is about the values and rituals. So what do you want to reward? When we talk about failing, success can mask confusion, as you mentioned. Processes break, feedback become hearsay, rules become blurry. The founder always want to have the final say, or you're going to have lack of alignment. So you don't agree on the ICP or the clients you want to go after for. So don't do that. But when we look about scale up succeeding, they go really well towards the different growth stages you mentioned. So the hustle, first motion of processes and repeatable systems. They own the why now, the why us story. They never lose sight on why they started in the first place. They have high ownership in the company. You want the people to push back on things so they are comfortable and they care about sharing it. Clear expectations on the expected behavior to build trust while scaling. Deep customer ties. Organization has to work as a learning system, have a feedback culture system, do informal check-ins with prepared questions, and have shared commitments on things you agreed upon. And ideally do quarterly offsites to talk about behavior and expectations. When we talk about failing again, I guess don't have a hero culture, so don't glorify overwork. Do not stop listening to the customers. Do not micromanage. Indecisiveness, not making decisions you need to make, or creating a blame culture. And when you want to grow to 10K MR, prioritize deep conversations instead of conversions, and then growing towards 10 million AR, chop it up, 1 million AR, focus on one ICP channel and keep repeating that. And then 1 to 10 million leverage community partners, create a flywheel, and hire stage fit people.
Couldn't have said better.
There you go. There you go. It's all your words, just my notes. Cool. What we're going to do, Hugo, we're going to link towards your book, right? We kind of talked about it, but then in the podcast, where can people find it if they want to read more?
The book is available on Amazon, so that's easy access. Then, connect me on LinkedIn for any kind of other topics. I try to be as responsive as possible. I love to work asynchronous, so even sometimes I have conversations with voice notes to accommodate requests left and right. But I love to engage in conversations about building SaaS businesses. I'm always eager to learn more.
Cool. We're definitely going to add a link to your LinkedIn profile, Hugo Pereira, currently in Portugal, but living in the Netherlands. He's the author of the book, Teams in Hell, How to End Bad Management. So definitely, this is going to go live during holiday season. So order the book on Amazon and actually read it in your destination. For people listening, leave us a review if you can. It takes literally 10 seconds, but it's going to help us to boost the algorithms. And we're going to add a poll to the Spotify episode. Let me know what you thought of the episode so I can always improve my guests, questions, anything else. Again, thanks for coming on, Hugo.
Thanks, Joran. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching this show of the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast. You made it till the end, so I think we can assume you liked this content. If you did, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you like this content, feel free to reach out if you want to sponsor the show. If you have a specific guest in mind, if you have a specific topic you want us to cover, reach out to me on LinkedIn. More than happy to take a look at it. If you want to know more about Rarities, feel free to reach out as well. But for now, have a great day and good luck growing your B2B SaaS.